All right, we got Megan with a D on the podcast.
You were like,
today.
isn't that Dagan?
That's Dagan. I don't say Megan. I think Megan is M-A-E-G.
Well, I think you said Megan with the D, and you were like, isn't that Dagan?
Yeah, I say Megan. Well, Dagan, he's got a lot going on. That's the way I'm gonna open this podcast. He's got a lot going on.
He's West Coast Nick.
He's West Coast Nick. He's importing stuff from Colombia.
He's Tupac, and you're Biggie.
All right.
You know?
I don't mind that. I can take that. I feel like that's a compliment. But he's got design, he's got construction, he's got landscape. We start this podcast by telling Jeff Sweener, who's our guest host this week, to get out of his office because he's got masons outside of his office making a whole bunch of noise.
Yep.
Jeff, what's up?
How are you guys?
I appreciated the conversation with Dagan. He obviously has a lot going on. He was honest and very humble with everything he has going on, and understands that, yeah, there's a lot. Not all of it is the most profitable right now. What his goals are for it, that, hey, like, we've just implemented this, we're looking to grow. And, we've had people on before where we have all these things going on, and yeah, it's all successful and it all goes off without a hitch. It wasn't the case with him. He just told us what he has going on, where it stands, what he hopes for, and where he's looking to go with it. So it's just a really humble, nice, honest conversation. And I think that he's looking to do good things and elevate himself in the industry, and he has a ton of energy behind it. So I'm excited to see where things go.
He's off to a good start. I mean, he's only a decade in, and he's got a lot going for him. I'm super impressed with what he is able to build from a company standpoint in just 10 short years.
Yeah,
I feel like it took me 30 to get to that point.
These guys must be cheating.
We're all taking advice from you, Jeff. So we're just trying to speed the process up. Hey guys, before we get into this podcast, big thanks to Andersen Windows. Andersen knows that the products that they manufacture are part of the legacy we're all trying to build. From Fibrex composite material that delivers performance and looks at a budget-friendly price point, to the Easy Connect reinforcing joining systems that make it easier to assemble oversized window walls with less people, and to Andersen's best-performing A-series product line with the most energy-efficient windows and doors Andersen has ever offered. Whatever your building needs are, they've got you covered.
Andersen knows it's about fewer callbacks and products that will perform over time. That's why they test and test and test their products beyond the threshold required by the industry. See the difference for yourself at andersenwindows.com/4-pros.
Hey, don't let communication problems get in the way of you growing your construction business. Here's 3 quick tips to help your team, subcontractors, and clients all get on the same page. First, establish a single source of truth to keep all the communication in one place. Second, communicate in real time to ensure everyone stays updated. And third, don't be a middleman. Let your team connect directly.
What's the secret to mastering all 3? Buildertrend's newest feature, chat. With instant messaging and group chats, collaboration has never been easier. Say goodbye to miscommunication and hello to seamless coordination. See their latest tool in action by scheduling a free demo at buildertrend.com/mcdemo.
Homeowners trust you to get their products done and to do them well, so it always helps when the other industry experts have your back.
For over 80 years, Velux has been solely focused on developing innovative skylights trusted around the world. They've established themselves as the market leader in skylights by transforming spaces with natural light and fresh air.
Check out veluxusa.com/remodeler to find out how Velux brand can back your next build.
So the first thing we want to know is how to properly pronounce your name.
It's a good one. Dagan.
Dagan. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
My brother's name is Hagan.
Oh, that's cool.
Close. but I figured
I used to have to like tell people like Megan with a D because like
Yeah.
for 30 years, like everyone was just asked how to pronounce it. So Megan with a D.
didn't
Wait,
want to bot.
it's
Didn't
Dagan or Dagan?
Dagan.
Oh yeah,
Dagan. It's
okay.
Dagan, but
Yeah,
it's
that's
like the
what I
easiest
thought.
way to
But
like,
when you say
yeah.
Megan with a
Because most
D,
people pronounce Megan, Dagan. It's like the
yeah.
easiest way to get them to get there.
okay, all right.
Instead of botching it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Dagan.
Dagan. I got a lot of that. Yeah.
People pronounce my last name wrong all the time. They're like, I get Schiffer a lot, but then I get like Schiffer. I'm like that.
Schiffer? Seriously?
Oh, dude, in school it'd be like Nick Schiffer. I'm like that's how you're pronouncing it. Like
Schiffer. I don't know what school you went to.
Right? Or then it's just Skiffer. I get Schiffler a lot. Like they add an L in there. Dang, what is the structure of your company? I know. So you and I, let me back up. You and I talked like I think 3 years ago.
I know. I was trying to remember it because I know we had a conversation once.
It
was a while ago.
I saw when I saw your name in the schedule, I'm like, I know we chatted, and I looked it up. It was August 2021, which
there you go.
I mean, doesn't seem that long ago, but apparently is that long ago.
It's a whole nother world.
Yeah, it was very different. And we talked about company structure. We talked about employees. We talked about the pre-construction process. Like I think we shared the pre-construction agreement that we put together. Hopefully I sent it to you. I know.
Yeah, I think I did. And I think
okay,
I used like as the base for what I use now. You know, it's been
awesome.
Morphed a bunch of times, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What is your company structure now? Like I know you get landscape, but give us a rundown.
So we're kind of like 4 companies in reality, but the main construction company is Dagan Design and Construction. I think we have 9 back of house between office employees. We're a design and build, so I have designers on staff too. We operate as like a design company as well, so we do design projects only as just interior designers. And then almost all of our projects now on the build side are design build. We occasionally still take a project on from an outside designer, but for the most part, we're doing almost all interior design ourselves now in-house. And then I don't know how many years ago now, 3 years ago, I started a second company, which was DDC Landscape. So I went and got a separate license, separate corporation in California. That's kind of how you have to structure everything in order to take on individual landscape projects. So that's kind of what we did. So it's fully separate company. It's got its own project managers, own field staff, everything. So most of the time, like our sweet spot is where we get like an estate where we do the house, the design, and then we also do the landscape construction on the project. So we kind of encompass the whole house from start to finish. And then we have an import furniture company, DDC & Co., where we import from Colombia. It's a sort of high-end chair manufacturer that I help design and help the color patterns. It's all hand done. So like everything that we do, kind of like you guys, it's like, it's got to be quality. It's got to have craftsmanship. It's got to have a story to it. And that's kind of like why we chose to do this. It's all handmade in Santa Marta, Colombia. Very cool stuff. And we use that on a lot of our landscape projects. And then we have sort of a retail store as well. And then we sell a lot online. And then we have kind of like, I think a couple of you guys have a DDC and Next, which is our sort of management maintenance company for houses that we finish. We sort of monitor, most of it's for second homes in our area. People that don't rent it, but they just want their house to be kept really well while they're away. Mm-hmm. So we have a guy who kind of just like helps security. We go by there twice a week and just make sure there's no leaks, angle stops are dry, all that kind of stuff. And then there's like a concierge component where like they leave cars, we start their cars so their batteries don't die, things like that. So it's kind of all encompassing.
I might need you for one of the trucks that's been sitting in my parking lot. I went to start it the other day and it was totally dead. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this right now. Like,
yeah, it's a thing. Like when you're
totally
like if you leave cars, like you come back for your vacation, like your car's dead. It's a thing.
I'm sure I'm not the only one digging. You just rattled off so much, and I'm like,
I know. Sorry,
now I'm like,
a lot.
no, it's totally fine. And now I'm gonna obviously give the follow-up question, like how the hell do you manage all this? And there's so many components of it. So I think, for the benefit of anyone listening, like that's going to be I think that's really interesting to hear, what your role plays in all these things, right? Like it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, this stemmed from the design side, right? Like it kind of started as interior design and has then morphed into all of this. Is that
No, like first and foremost, we were a construction company. I
your
used to
construction
like when I
firm?
first, yeah, I was a small company when I first started. I was bags on, and I would do hand sketches for very small projects. Like you want a bathroom, I would hand sketch all the elevations, and that's
Hmm.
how we would execute it. So like I was always doing the design build. I just didn't really know I was doing it in the categorical sense. Um, but now I have two people on staff that are very good at CAD, and we do very professional drawings, and we do spec books, and it's a whole different level now. I was just doing it on a very elementary level from the start. But
Hmm.
first and foremost, we're a construction company, and then the design kind of stemmed out of partly like there's some very good designers out there, and then there's some not so great, and we were just kind of having more and more not as great experiences. And I just like at some point was like, well, we're doing a lot of these executions on site. Why don't we just do it from the start? So I basically plunged in. I said, I'm going to hire a full-time interior designer. And we get called so often because they want the design build. They don't want more than one point of contact.
Hmm.
So most of our work comes because that's the setup that most people are looking for right now. So it was kind of just like what does the demand say? What are the calls we're getting? We kept getting asked like, will you guys do the design? And like I wasn't set up for it a handful of years ago, but now we are, and it's getting dialed in, and it's a nice setup. Our designers act as project coordinators too, so they're there for the whole duration. That was another like thing that I notice is why not just have the people that are drawing it be the project coordinators? Like obviously
Hmm.
they're the most intimate knowledge of it. Let them see the project through, and it's been really good because they know the project in and out. When even subs call on site, like your drawing shows X, Y, and Z, like they know the answer quick before you even
Hmm.
have to get to the super or the PM. So it's kind of a cool setup, and I like how it sort of evolved.
I was going to say, like, what was so you started your company a little over 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So what was the evolution like coming from a belt on contractor to hiring design in staff, like from a time perspective?
Um, So I mean, like I was very small. I was like building decks by myself. I was nothing for like 4 or 5 years. I didn't get my first like good like sizable remodel for probably 3 to 4 years. Um, so I've always said like for literally for like 2 years I was like the pergola guy. I was just building like pergolas and fences and stuff like whatever I could get.
Yeah.
And which is cool, it's just like get your feet wet. You got to do something. And then it's basically you get one good remodel, someone takes a chance on you, and you do a good job. And then it's just kind of a trickle effect. This is a very word of mouth networking type of business. It's kind of who is where the next job comes from. You do a good job on one big house, they tell their friend, and that's where the next job is. So I think it was probably my first hire was probably like 6, 7 years in. I was really on my own for a lot of it. And I was doing some probably more work than I should have as a solo guy. I had like three sizable projects at a time, and I was just billing myself. And I learned pretty quickly, what you suck at and what you're good at. I didn't want to look at books anymore. I didn't want to open up QuickBooks anymore. That was my first thing. I want someone else to handle that. I'm not good at it. Someone else take the lead on that one. And then I really needed field support, so a PM was my next hire. And then I hired a project coordinator who could help me with all the selections, procurement, that kind of stuff. Um, and so it was kind of that evolution. And then the designers were really the last component on the construction side, where it was like, it's time to bring this in house. And it was a tough decision because I had to think, do I have enough, design work to keep this person, on staff for a year? So it was kind of, a little bit of a risk. We had a couple jobs in the works, and it's worked out. Like I already hired my second, and we're pretty close to needing a third. So it goes pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, if you're 7 years in at that point, making your one of your first hires, and then to be 12 years into business now, I would say that the progression um, went pretty quickly
Yeah.
after the 7 year mark. Um,
Yeah. it's kind of like once you decide to have employees, you have to really dive in, head first.
So
And that's,
going from like the structure of what you were doing before, obviously, is completely different to the structure and how to make money as a larger business. Um, what do you feel were the challenges as you progressed into a completely different model that you had to sort out or are still trying to sort out, moving from more of a belt on contractor to, hey, like I'm going to build a team around this. I'm going to take the belt off and I'm going to be managing people, with probably a lot more money coming in and going out.
Yeah, I mean, like overhead is always like the thing I'm always thinking about. How do I cover my overhead? And for the first handful of years, I wasn't really charging correct amounts for the people that were on site. So I was, covering overhead usually through some sort of my profits or whatever else was there. And so it's been I'm in a Builder 20 group, and honestly, that's been like a huge game changer as far as like knowing what other guys charge for their supers, charge for their PMs, charge for the project coordinator. So I can realistically cover those salaries on the work that they're doing per project. And so it's taken a long time to like feel comfortable about charging that and like also getting them up to speed where I feel like good about like, no, these people are doing a really good job. Like this is the dollar amount that we need to stay afloat and to keep performing on your job. But that wasn't easy. And I probably, was eating overhead for so many years just because I didn't really understand the correct amount I should be billing for all these people that are, performing work on these jobs. So that's probably we're getting better at it. And we're finally like each of my project coordinators are actually being billed per job now. So I'm actually like getting the correct amount to keep overhead paid for and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, when you get there, it's a nice feeling. Like I'm not just like paying for overhead from somewhere else anymore. Like I'm paying for it where it was supposed to come from. The money was supposed to come from. So
did you have to change your marketing approach, or like did the projects change in order to foot the additional costs, that were appropriate for the business you were running, or was it just a matter of, actually switching the market and what projects you were taking on to clients who are willing to pay for that?
I think kind of just like both things. Like we wanted to make sure that the project was a good project that would support a staff like that, but we also had to be transparent about what the project costs look like. We are a team, so these people are going to be billed on an hourly basis based on the work they're performing. So like prior to that, when I was on my own, I didn't even think about that just because I was a one-man band. Like overhead, I don't know what that is. Like my home office, the corner in my house, like I didn't have anything. So now I have an office and multiple trucks, and all of a sudden, like you got to pay for this stuff. So how do you do that? You got to charge the client because that's what all this stuff is being used to build your house. So we got to charge you appropriately. So it was kind of a twofold. It was me like not being shy about wanting like to be able to charge for these people that are being there. Like a PM, I was like, God, can I really charge $90, $100? Like it was just like in my mind, it was like just way too much. Like they're going to be there for, I don't know how many hours, 1,000 hours over the course of 2 years. Like, can I really charge that much? And like, yes, like that is what it takes to get that job done. That guy needs to be there. He needs to be there to answer questions. So that's a charge that I just had to tell the client, we need this to execute at the level we want to do. And some people will be like, you're crazy. Like that's too much. And then others are like, that sounds great. So we had to choose like on the clients that said, that sounds great.
I think to myself, like people tell you, oh, you just need to charge more money, right? Like it's not necessarily that anything changes other than you become privy to costs that you weren't before. And it's like, why am I not making money? All right, I need to do these things to be able to charge for them. And like, yeah, I think that your marketing changes and you're looking to sell a slightly different job. But half the time it kind of is that you just start charging more money. And I don't know if it's confidence that you understand your numbers and you're like, yeah, this is what it takes to do the job. But people always say like, just charge more. And you think to yourself, well, it's not quite that easy. And I don't know if you have to substantiate those costs to yourself to be able to sell them, or you literally just start charging more money and it works out. I haven't figured that out myself.
I think confidence is that's the word. Is like for me, it was like having the confidence to do that.
Yeah.
And part of it is like were my employees, the people on staff, doing a good job? And if they are and they're kicking butt, then I feel confident that I can charge that. Just like charging more to like get the same quality done, but maybe there's some mishaps. Like that's kind of a gray area where I don't feel totally comfortable. But like when they're kicking butt and like clients are happy and we're making progress, yeah, I feel totally confident in like charging for what they're worth, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that what you just said, like when they're not kicking butt, it's like then you have this like lack of confidence that should I really be charging this quote unquote premium for these guys? But it is something that I think generally speaking we need to understand that this is a very imperfect industry, and I know we all know that, but I think that for some reason, from a client's perspective, it has been decided that it should be perfect, and and work that is produced should be perfect, and and
There should be zero reworks either.
yeah, it should be zero rework. But the reality is, it's like it's just that it's not the case. And I think this is my argument when I had a conversation on a consulting call, I think a week or two ago, and they were talking about hourly rates, and they were talking specific about how the hourly rates, like, should they be by person? And I said no, they should be by role. And they were like, well, what if one carpenter makes $30 an hour and the other one makes $40 an hour? Like, do I bill them out the same? I said, yeah. Like, well, so I'm making more money on this, the $30 an hour guy than I am 40. I'm like, well, if you break it down, probably not, because the guy that you're paying 30 is being paid less because he probably makes more mistakes than the guy making $40 an hour. So the $30 an hour, if you're billing them out, say just for simple math, like you bill them out at $50 and you're making $20 on that guy and $10 on the other guy, it's like that guy's probably making $10 an hour in mistakes. So you're still netting the same profit. You're that $10 an hour goes into education and training and ultimately rework. And I think this is a thing that people to be really in tune with, and that's we actually have our on the moderncraftsman.co, we put up a labor burden sheet and that you can download for free, and that's exactly what it's for, so you can understand what the cost of these guys are, from just a baseline, like what's the burden against the company, but then furthermore, like to take that a step further is assigning those rates. And Dagan, you actually said it, like being in a Builder 20 group, networking with builders, being on social media, like talking to other people doing what you're doing, you get a sense of what is a market rate. So, and not only a market rate for what you're paying someone, but a market rate for what you should be charging. And it's exactly like I went through the same thing. It's like, at some point we were like, I'm billing these guys yet at $120 an hour. Like, that's a lot of money. And then I would talk to anyone I could, and they're like, yeah, we're like 120 to 150, 140. It's like, oh,
yeah.
So we're there. Like, yeah, and this and that, and this person makes this, or this person gets billed out at this much. And yeah, I think that this is where I think, Tyler, you're right. Like, there's a point where you just end up start charging more, and there's all these incremental things that get added to, the quote unquote estimate or the budget that do add a substantial amount of cost, but they're all very justifiable. It's like the moment, the moment you understand that you pay, 1% of your sales cost to an insurance company based on how much you sell, and you realize that that's a job cost. Like, the moment you understand that, and then you go add a 1% line item in your budget, like you don't ever question it again. Like, it's just there. And the first client that tells you, like, hey, what's the 1% for? It's like, it's the insurance, it's the cost of insurance I'm paying only for your job.
Yep.
And
one of the things we talk about in Builder 20 is like how to look at what is the job cost, what's the language, what justifies a job cost. Like software, we talk about, like, is your construction software a job cost? And like the answer is yes on our end. Like, would we have it if I didn't do your job? Right. I wouldn't have it if I didn't do your job. So it's a job cost. I have to have it in order to do the job. Yeah. So like, and that's been a big one, is a lot of our Builder 20 group, they always like spread out your costs. Like, is it a job cost? It should be its own line item. And homeowners most of the time don't care. Like, that's a justifiable. Like, yeah, you need insurance. I want you to have insurance. If that's what it costs to do it, fine. That's what it is.
I love the
software,
follow-up.
same thing.
I love the follow-up though. It's like, well, what if the client doesn't want to pay for insurance? Like, doesn't care if you have insurance. It's like, then you did a bad job vetting that client.
Yeah.
Because that client doesn't, that's not the only thing they don't value. Like, if they don't want you to have insurance, like, let's be real.
But I think it's a great, like, if they do like question it, it's like, well, thank you for making my decision whether this is a job for us or not. Like, you've gotten into the bad category.
I also think that understanding all those numbers and being confident in those numbers, they make the selling process so much easier. And there's no hesitation with disclosing numbers and rates and why this person makes this much money and why your percentage is this much money. Because if it's made up and you don't really understand why you're charging that much, you feel as though you're hiding something. But when you understand your numbers and they're the cost of doing business and it's a job cost, and you really understand what makes your business profitable and what makes you money and what costs you money, it makes selling the work so much easier because you just understand and you're confident in those numbers and you're not trying to convince them of a number. It's just like, no, this is very matter of fact. This is what it costs and this is our profit.
Yeah, it's very true.
From a design perspective, you said that you're looking to grow that aspect even more of your business. How many designers do you have on staff right now?
Two full-time designers.
And so you said that you're doing the design work on most of your jobs, but you're also offering interior design for clients who are not using you guys as builders?
Yep. We have a couple going right now. And it's been a growing, because I think people always thought that we had to do design build. So we're, again, kind of like the marketing side, just making sure people understand that we do design only.
Yeah.
And kind of our sales pitch to that is that you're getting a builder and a designer versus just a designer. So, in your guys' shoes, like if you were to work with us and you had a question about detail, you're calling a builder who's done that execution 20 times versus a designer who's like, I don't know, you tell me how to build it. Like, well, that's the sales pitch, is like you get a builder that helps execute quicker and faster, more complicated design details. It's been really good. We like the design side. It expands sort of our offerings or services. Building, I think I've heard a couple of you guys are trying to like build all over the country, which, in my mind, I'm like, I think it's possible, but it's kind of crazy. But like, we've been very confined. Like our wheelhouse is like 5 miles. So we sort of like stay in our lane as far as like, this is the area we want to be in to build. And it seems like we have enough steady flow of jobs coming our way to sort of keep a really good pipeline of work for design build in our little bubble here. But we can design anywhere. We can design across the country, out of state, other cities, et cetera. So just kind of a way to expand what we do without having to build it, which is logistically really challenging outside of local.
So
I think I just want to comment on the building around the country, because that is something I said. And what I love and hate about the amount of podcasting and social media I do is that everything I say will at some point be used against me when I change my mind, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's like I told my dad, I've told the story, but I told my dad when I was like 8 years old or something like this, that I would never, ever buy a Ford. And he looked at me, he goes, "You're going to regret telling me that." And Jeff, I know you're a Ford guy. I can't do it. I told my dad at 8 years old I would never own a Ford. So, but the building around the country is like, for me, is stemmed in the fact that I want to build the craziest shit and like stuff that's just world renowned and just architectural masterpieces. And
Totally for that.
It's not that I don't think I can do it here. I think that my thought process is that if I open up the opportunity to build anywhere, I will open myself up to the opportunity of building these truly one-of-one homes or buildings,
States, whatever. Yeah.
And with the hope that doing something like 45 White Oak invigorates my local market into this world of, I just want that. And then I don't travel around the world and I build stuff like that on a repeat basis. I mean, that is quite literally the reason why we're building that project with zero compromise to anything, because
I'm doing the same thing right now.
Yeah, it's the opportunity to
I'm building my
prove.
house with the same thought process.
I mean, someone asked me the other day, they asked me if we sold the property, and I said no. And they were like, "Hey, can I ask you, like, is it really your house?" I'm like, I wish it was my house. Like, that would be an epic turn of events, but no, it is very much a product I need to sell. But yeah, it's, like, that might change my course and say, you know what, I don't need to travel around the world to build this stuff. Like, there's a big enough demand here. But until I either create that or see that demand, it's, I'm not going to like, I look at it as not limiting myself to where it is and only limiting myself to what it is.
Part of my design process, or the thought behind the design side of our business, is that I have the opportunity potentially to be a part of those crazy projects around the country. If I can get to a level where, whatever builder and whatever city is like, hey man, I saw that project you did locally, can you help recreate that here? Like, now I have an in or an opportunity potentially to be a part of something like that. And I like, same thing. I'd love to build like the coolest, baddest ass houses around the country. Mm-hmm. Building them without like the crews that I know and trust locally, like, that makes me very nervous. But I'm happy to educate someone locally about whatever detail to make it look like how I did it locally. So, that was a process, in my mind. I'm like, that would be really cool to build some awesome ranch in Texas. Like, let me be a part of that. Whatever capacity, I'll do it, kind of thing. But my house built locally, I'm building my own house right now. And like, kind of like, is it 45 White Oak? Is that what it is? Or what? 45 Oak? Similarly, I get asked all the time, like, what would you do in your house? And like, the whole reason I'm like building this is like, I'm going to show you what I would do in my house. Like, I put insulation on the house. I use rock everywhere. I have stone everywhere. I have big timbers. Like, this is my kind of house. Like, if you want me to recreate it, awesome, let's do it, kind of thing.
Right.
So I wanted to kind of have it be a showpiece, like, where I went balls out, every single material I've ever wanted to use, every detail, every crazy thing I've ever wanted to do. I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Just fun.
So from a design perspective, when you guys are hired just for interior design, are you working with builders at that point to execute design?
We just started. So most of everything we've done with our in-house designers, we're design build. So we're doing the build. We've just started to take projects that we're working with outside builders now, and which has been interesting.
Yeah, like what's that relationship look like? Because I feel like that would be really difficult, especially when you have the design build and you're used to your systems and you're used to working a certain way. Now to be handling the design aspect and then relying on other contractors, where it's like, oh, we'll just do it ourselves, or we're putting too much time into this in order to get it to where we need to, or like, what prevented you from selling that job as a design build in the first place?
Sometimes the project like isn't big enough to do the build side of it. Like, we're a big enough company where it sort of has to be a whole house or a new build or some category. So on the design side, we can take a multi-room. Like, if it's kitchen, 2 baths, like, that's not a big deal. We can design that quickly. And honestly, a lot of it, I think, is actually a benefit for the builder, because as builders, we know what kind of package we want to get and what kind of details we need to see in order to execute. So we've been working internally, like, our designers and project coordinators are working constantly with our PMs and myself to say, like, what detail on that hood would have explained it better to execute without having to call us. Yeah. So now we do like cuts for each one of our hood elevations. So we can show what kind of arch we want. We can show what materials, how far does it protrude off the wall. So, like, I think our designers are like really good now because they actually understand a little bit of the construction side. And they're all like the first like 6 months they're here, they're always like, I had no idea how any of this stuff gets built. Like, it's eye opening for them because they just never get on site. It's always just like, give it to the builder and say, go build this. Like, call me if you have any questions. But it's always like, you guys know, verify and field, builder to verify, builder to figure it out. It's like, it's always builder, just builder figure it out. So it's like, we're trying to change that and help the builder a little bit on what they're getting.
So typically right now, are those leads coming from the client or from the builder for the design work?
Client. Most of it's like social media. They see us, they want, a design that we've done or a house that we've done, something similar. And, but our goal is to like work with a couple builders locally where they're like, that was a nice process. We want to keep going with you guys. Like, next build, we're going to throw your name out there. Cause we want to make that relationship better. You could probably like, social media is all over the place. Like, it's all about the collaboration. But like, I've worked with enough architects and designers where it's not always great, but sometimes it's awesome and it works great. But sometimes you get in these situations where it's like homeowner and designer against builder, because builder, it's always a builder's fault. It doesn't matter what's happening, but it's always your fault at the end of the day. So I'm trying to I want to change that dialogue from the inside. So builder calls us, we're support for you, man. I know you're the guy doing it out there. So whatever information you need from us, like, let us figure it out. We'll get that information for you.
Yeah, I always felt that was the missing aspect of design and really the challenge from an interior design perspective, where it's like the cost, justifying the cost to bring in more than style and spatial layout, to bring in more to like a constructability or a more detailed build where like you need that information. The builder needs that information, and often when that information's not there, and then they have to take the time to verify that in the field or schedule a site meeting or just slow down the progress, the designer doesn't understand like how much of a headache and a hiccup that can be for them. Where like it takes time, and whether you're putting the time in up front, supplying them with that information so that they can build that, and there's less questions and it's getting done right the first time, is really, really important. It's something that I've always felt was missing from the design perspective of things. And if there were a designer that I could throw work to where it's like, I know that they're going to get this to this level of detail so that there's a lot less gray area and this is actually buildable and able to be constructed the way that it's drawn. And yeah, there's going to be some questions that we have, but it's not like, here's the idea of what we want, now you figure it out, and then we're going to tell you that that's not how we wanted it. Which I think is where the problem, a lot. Yeah, and where the problem, because now it's like, all right, we paid all this money, it's the builder's fault, the builder's eating the cost, the builder's making the fixes, and there's obviously resentment and frustration there. So I definitely think that relationship, at least in my area, could use some help. And I do think that a lot of times getting the designer and the builder together to both bring their knowledge and expertise and create a process or a system together makes such a huge difference. Or like being able to take somebody under your wing and say like, hey, when I get a design or when I'm looking to design it, these are the considerations from my perspective that I need, and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm on the financials too. It's kind of like it's a weird one. You have to like be in the trenches, but designers are trying to make all the procurements to take their markup. So I'm very sensitive to builders. Like, I always ask, like, whatever setup you want, if you want to be the procurer and that's where you get your markup, great. We'll just provide the spec book. If you want us to help procure and you just get a builder fee and you make your money that way, great. All that's good. Because we were getting pinched a lot. Like, designers, like, I want to purchase the floor. I want to purchase fixtures. I have no liability, but I'm going to purchase so I can make a markup. And I'm like, well, that's a weird spot for us to be in. Like, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars of product that I'm liable for, but I don't get to make any money. Or we have to charge the client twice, and I don't want to do that either. So,
or you need to accept the delivery. They want you to unbox it to make sure everything's damaged. And I'm like, hold on. I'm literally in the middle of doing something, and you want me to go out and pull apart a chandelier that I have no clue what it's supposed to look like and make sure that all 863 parts of it are there. Like, This
or
doesn't.
yeah.
And
I
then
always
wait,
say
and then
like,
there's
are
only
you gonna have the forklift?
862, so I need to tell you which parts are missing, and I'm sitting here
Yeah.
like I was in the middle of doing something.
Yeah, I always tell like in those meetings I've had, I was like, so you're going to bring the forklift and have the tile in the
Yeah,
bathroom ready for us?
yep.
It's like,
And
No,
no,
make
that's
you're
sure
your
that
not.
job.
all the
That's your
locks
job.
are correct and that none of it's damaged and that there's somebody there to open the garage door and close it. And it's like this is what the markup and the
Right.
delivery, like that's what it's all for.
It's
All these
funny.
experiences are kind of what led to this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny though. Like in my Builder 20, like we'll talk about this specifically. It's like, hey, who lets the designer buy tile, or who lets the client handle the landscape? And it's just a room full of builders, and everyone's like, no, you take the markup, screw those guys. But the reality is like we had a designer reach out recently, and they were like, hey, we want you to do a big millwork package for us, but we want the contract to be with us. I'm like, well, we actually have to contract with the client, like from liability perspective and warranty and so on and so forth. Like, well, we make a markup on it, so we want to make sure that we get our markup. And I was like, hey, listen, like I'm all for everyone making money. Like you
Yeah.
might pass on all of your design fees at a reduced rate because you make the markup on me. Like I fully respect that everyone has their opportunity to make money, but
Totally.
this has to be mutually beneficial and protect both of us. And if you're making 10% on me, then let's figure out how we do that in a way that protects me and still awards you the profits that you are deserving of because you got the job. And I don't think that's the common way to react. I think the common way to react is like trying to screw the next guy. It's like, and don't get me wrong, like when a designer is like, hey, we're going to purchase all the tile and purchase all the light fixtures, it's like, hey, that's fine. Like that is not how we would like to handle it. I just want to be clear that in my budget, I'm still going to carry the markup that I would have made on that tile. Just to be super clear, and I'm also going to
Yep.
carry general labor for us dealing with the delivery, the warranty, like etc. So as long as we're clear on that, like that's fine. You can provide it. We're not working for free and we're not assuming liability. I would
Yeah.
suggest that you just let us handle it, and and we'll help you on the back end if needed, or if that's how you're making your money, let's figure that out. But ideally we're controlling it, because what I don't want to happen, and this is usually where they go for it, is like what I don't want to happen is this stuff be late and then the entire job gets delayed and I'm blaming you, and now the I'm charging the client 10 grand a month in supervision, and I'm waiting on top because I'm waiting on tile. And then
Right.
usually at
And
that
then
point they're like, oh
client
yeah,
has, yeah,
I don't want to deal with that.
no thanks. I'm
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You deal with it. Yeah. No, I believe I've had exact same conversations and yeah, I mean, it's an evolution of how I got to here, but it was a lot of those circumstances. And oddly, in California, it's illegal to contract. So, like a designer, a lot of designers are doing that. They
Mm-hmm.
want to contract a cabinet guy and
Yep.
make a markup on him, and then he's actually installing something on a project that's has a GC, and
Mm-hmm.
like it's actually illegal in
Yeah.
our state, but like it happens all the time.
Right.
So I just try to like keep all that clean, and I always like, and that's why we sort of like don't work with a ton of designers because they don't really like that setup. And the couple that do are, they're very good, and those are usually the best projects. It's like we know what we're supposed to do. We make our money on the front end. We have
Right.
correct design fees. We make front end on the furniture. Great, that's exactly where it's supposed to be. We'll take
Right.
all the liability. Just let us purchase the stuff. All good.
Hey guys, real quick pause. I just want to talk about something. Our new website, moderncraftsman.co. I want you to head over there and do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. It's going to loop you into our newsletter. That newsletter, you're going to get show updates every single week. You're also going to get some behind the scenes stuff that we're working on that is only for people that are subscribed to the newsletter. And check out the extras tab at the top of our website. There's both a labor burden calculator. It's the one I actually use in my business to keep track of our labor costs, as well as the pre-construction agreement that both Tyler and I use for running our pre-construction process in our business. Both of those are available to download completely for free. Previously, we were selling them, and we actually sold just to be frank, a crap load of them. We've decided to move those to free, so you can download them right from our website. Again, moderncraftsman.co. And lastly, hey, make sure if you want to join us in Boston at the end of September, you have to register. We're just a month away from that event. The hotel block is closing soon. So if you haven't booked your trip, I would suggest booking that, not only the hotel block, but you got to secure your spot at the show. It is limited to 30 people, and there's only a few of those seats left. So head over to contractorcoalitionsummit.com. And if you want a discount code and you have not signed up for the newsletter, well, then sign up for the newsletter and then shoot me a DM at Nick Schiffer on Instagram, and I'll make sure you have that code for a discount from the ticket price.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, that labor burden calculator and pre-construction agreement, we're going to be putting out some content here shortly that's going to build off of those. So you're going to want them in order to be able to put any of that information to use. So you may want to hop on and grab them sooner than later.
That is a spoiler alert.
When you talk about interior design, are we talking about architectural design, or are we talking about interior design like selecting tile?
Strictly interiors. So elevations.
Picking colors. And can you just clarify that?
We actually do all the millwork. So we elevate all millwork in the interior of the house. So we have an architect that we work with. So if something has to go through permit set or exterior elevations or floor plan, he's doing all of that. And then once we get the dialed in approved floor plan, we do all the millwork on the interior. So all millwork, flooring selections, paint selections, even down to like grid patterns for windows and doors, operations, all that stuff. We do that as a team in-house.
No, but when you're working for another builder, let's say, and you're providing these services, are you just providing drawing, or are you providing selections of materials?
So both. So our sort of interior package is all elevations of the room we're working in, and then we build our own spec book, which includes everything from fixtures, millwork, baseboard sizes, profile, everything down to even like stains. If it's a stain grade millwork, if it's paint grade, we provide everything. So the builder, once we give it to him, if he really looked at all of our package, should be able to execute it. Should have every detail in there.
That'd be nice. What was the reason for, and the only reason I'm curious, my wife's in furniture production. So what was the reason for creating outdoor furniture, or you said you were making chairs, I think?
It's a company that we import for. So we're their like West Coast distributor. It was my best buddy got married to a Colombian, and I went there for a wedding, and I was actually kind of like floored by like the design world of Colombia, and like there's all these like very interesting like doors and furniture and tiles, like all these things, and I was like, God, there's a lot of cool stuff here. And so I went back like 3 months after his wedding and went to like this big design expo, and there was just a lot of really interesting stuff, and I was like, why don't I just do like a import company, and we can sell this through our landscape side, and which has worked pretty well. I mean, almost every landscape project we sell 4 to 6 chairs, and we used various things within these landscape, and then it kind of just like morphed a little bit, and I was like, I kept wanting to bring in more products, because it's all these like indigenous techniques basically. So
they
like
do that with drugs a lot in Colombia.
It's a common misperception, but yeah,
you can import all sorts of shit,
all kinds of stuff, including bananas and whatever else you want.
Oh my God.
It's like the first thing everyone says when I tell them I'm importing from Colombia. It's like, ooh, that's some interesting stuff. Huh?
That's where the money's at.
But Colombia, like Bogota, is a super interesting architectural place. There's actually areas within Bogota that look like Oxford, England, because all the architecture came from England from that era. So the Spaniards came and they brought in like English architects. So it's all these like cottage looking buildings, all brick, arches everywhere. It's amazing. Like you would have no idea that this is in the middle of Bogota, but architecturally and design wise, it's a very like fast forward driven country as far as design. So like furniture is really like cutting edge there. And that was kind of like what I saw. And I was like, well, this is like pretty unique. And like all these hotels are like very cool. And like there's a lot of design stuff going on here. And that was kind of like what sparked it. And I just kind of like went in. And I was like, well, let's do an import company. And I met these people. It's three brothers that are like 30 years old. They're like really aggressive. They're really fun to work with and like just have a lot of motivation. And I was like, I could get on board with this. And so I basically started another corporation and I brought in my first container. Here I am.
Did they import or export previously?
They had one. So there's one guy in Florida that they export to, and then they also export to Belgium and Germany. So not that many, but it is exported around the country, and they're unique because they can do like their famous chair is a PVC woven chair. It's called a Caribe chair. It's like meant to be kind of loungy and has like a circle steel frame. But like there was one I was in the MoMA, and it's called the Trace chair, and it's very colorful. It looks like a very like something you would see in the Caribbean. So it's super unique and it's striking. And that's kind of like what I was like, whoa, these are awesome. Like I gotta do this. So now I have a full-time salesperson. We're going to be in the Palm Springs Pride Festival this coming fall. We're doing a partnership with Trina Turk right now.
How much are you importing? Like a container? Wow.
We're only doing
container.
Like right now it's like one every like 10 months. I'd like to be up to like 5 or 6 a year. 5 or 6 a year is kind of like where it becomes a real company.
Yeah, from a revenue
right now I'm just sort of paying for it with other stuff. Yeah. It's a pet project currently, but needs to start paying for itself.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool that it's in the MoMA, but it's cool for you where it's like you're so involved in the design and the landscape aspect, and now to be able to like implement product. I mean, I think that is, we talk about ideal projects and ideal situations and setups and teams, but when you're able to, Jeff, we talked about this a couple podcasts ago, but it's like when you're able to do a project all the way to like everything, like down to the silverware and like that is such a cool feeling because you've built an entire home down to every fixture and finish, but to do that at a deep a deeper level of now it's your product. It's like a product you went out sourced. Like this is like probably similar to what Rachel deals with Tyler. It's like she's out there sourcing, like finding the source for this stuff and basically bringing it to fruition. And I think that's, I mean, I have so many trains of thoughts here, but it's like, I guess it's what we all do here as contractors. It's like we go out and we try to find not just the best product, but like the best people. Like who's the best plumber? Like who are the people that can, put together the band and go out and perform at my peak. And to be able to do that with, product and is cool. And I think that's where going back to like my thought around building around the country, it is about assembling the parts and pieces to productize what we do in a way that it doesn't matter what market we're in or where we are geographically. It's like we know our spec, we know our product, we can utilize technology to assemble things and ship things and essentially execute the result on site. There you got me going. You got my brain going. There was a project we looked at last year. A super famous architect over in Spain designed this house in like the North Shore of Massachusetts, and we got emailed the plans and we're like, hey, we want you to build this. I mean, like once in a lifetime opportunity. Come to find out, like the budget just was nowhere aligned. It just like it wasn't doable. And so I took a meeting with the architect anyway, and they walked through what the product was going to cost for them to manufacture in Spain. And I was like, oh, that's like literally a fifth of what we would have paid here. And that included shipping, the glazing, everything. So then it was just a matter of, Nick, if you can do the rest of the scope for whatever the number was, it was maybe like $500,000. And I priced that thing 6 different ways, and I simply, like, I couldn't get my actual cost to be that. And I was like, at this point, I was just willing to do it at $0 profit and anything,
Just
because
to
it
do
was,
it.
yeah, because it
Yeah.
was just like this insane project. But my point is they were essentially building this entire home in a factory that was going to be an architectural masterpiece that would have been shipped in a container and shown up on a job site and assembled in the matter of like whatever it was, like 3 or 4 months. And it's like, what, like,
What was the material? How was that
oh,
possible?
it was, they I forget what it's called, but it's almost like a reverse ICF. So it's like
Okay.
a foam centered concrete precast panel, and most of the walls were triple glazed glass, and then they had these fiberglass elements, like almost like translucent fiberglass structure. It was really cool.
Hmm.
The whole thing was going to be shipped. Like, all the plumbing was already in the slab. Like, you would have assembled this thing and screwed on your fixtures and had this insane home. And it just, that I think is what really like sent me down, like, back, when we looked at this project, it sent me down this rabbit hole of like, how do we do this? How do we leverage, these factories and these shops to produce something that is truly custom, but done so in a way that doesn't require the monotonous, like, assembly and production in a on a job site. And and we see all different, like, examples of that, where it's like you know they're prefabricating walls, like our white oak, like we fabricated all those walls in a shop, and everyone's like, it's no different than framing on site. It's like, well, not, I guess not really. Like, you're still laying the wall down and you're assembling it. You're just in a building protected from the elements and not, like, getting rain delays. And
Yeah.
you're also like able to spread out and work safer because you're working at waist height. And product is like, you're not staging product, like, you have the space for it, everything is there ready to go. So sure, I mean, the assembly and the actual fabrication is no different, but you're taking one step in a direction of, again, productizing what we're doing, and removing the you know the raw assembly of a home on a job site.
Do you think that works? I'm just trying to like think out loud because we do so many unique tile installations, plaster installations, rock installations. Like, I don't think there's any way that I could understand what the light is in that room, what my pattern is. Like, I just did this crazy wall in my laundry where it's 3 different teardrop tiles that's meant to look like a like crashing wave, and it's like 20 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way for me to not draw it on the wall and then show my
Of
tile guy
course there
how I
is.
want this laid out.
Of
So like
course.
some of like that kind of stuff.
No, but
Yeah, it's interesting.
it's that. I mean, you say that there's no way to have accomplished that. There is. It's, and I could say it's romanticism that you want to draw it by hand. But you could have drawn it in a computer. You could have you could have modeled the light. You could have built a model to show the sunlight on May 12th at 6:30 p.m. to show you what the light would have came through that particular window. Like, there's ways to do it, but it takes time to get there, and there's a lot of upfront effort. It's like I had this conversation with my team a couple weeks ago. It's like an SOP. Like, an SOP takes a standard operating procedure to draw, like, to sit down and write, like, step by step. This is how you build a house. That is so much work, and it would take hours. It could take 40 hours to, like, write out every step on how to build a house. But if you took those 40 hours and did it over the course of a year, it would save more than 40 hours, because it would prevent, like, mistakes or misses and things like that. It's the same thing with this tile wall. It's like, yeah, sure, it would take an enormous amount of upfront time to build a model and lay this out and figure it out on a computer. And frankly, you could have a factory lay up the tile on a sheet good that then popped on the wall and it would be done. Like, there's ways to accomplish it, but it's not it's just not it's not adopted by the industry yet. It's like CLT, like, the cross-laminated timber panels. We price it out for residential. It doesn't work. It's too expensive because not enough people are doing it on a small scale. It works great in multifamily mid-rise buildings because it's super efficient, and you just don't get the efficiency because it's not adopted yet. So once it's adopted, or we have a CLT factory local, like if there's a local factory that's doing this, then the cost of that becomes so much more obtainable.
Yeah, I was checking out like your 45 oak and how dialed in you got your models and stuff. So even like California, we don't even get MEPs on our plants. We have to do all of it on site.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's not what we did at White Oak is not common, and nor like we didn't actually get we actually didn't end up getting our mechanicals modeled in that model. I thought we would, but like the team just ended up not having the ability to, and so we end up on site walking through a lot of it. And to think, that project, that frame of that building went up, all the walls were pre-built, all the roof was pre-cut. To go through that whole process, we had less than a handful of questions that came up while they were framing. And I shit you not, like it was built within an 1/8 inch accuracy because the steel showed up and it fit perfect. And like there was no question, because what questions were left to have, because everything had been already pre-figured out. Now the plumbing shows up. We didn't coordinate it, and the plumbing's going fine until the other day I'm on site and realized that I directed him to put a 3-inch waistline right where I have a recessed light. And it's like, because I just, I didn't take I was only focused on plumbing layout with him. And then the electrician gets there and I'm focused on recessed lights, realizing there's my conflict. But if I had modeled it, we would have known immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a path to do that. I think it's a crazy amount of work to model all that stuff. But if it was modeled and it was all planned out, that could be pretty awesome.
I think it also gives us this opportunity, like, this is where, I mean, there's such a heavy focus on pre-construction and conversation recently, but this is where pre-construction really plugs in, and it gives you the opportunity to, potentially start constructing a building before the site is ready. We're looking at a job right now where permitting is at this point, I mean, it'll be a year of permitting. And we just got notice that we might be delayed another potentially month. But we're talking about just fabricating the entire house and having it staged and ready. So when building permit shows up, we're knocking the house down and we're framing and we're getting the building up, basically demoed and framed in a month. Because it's like, what are the things that we can do to expedite, construction while we're not allowed to build?
Yeah, I mean, so California, you probably may have heard, we have like the worst permitting, in the world. So we're always in such a hurry that the time to get a permit, like the building still could be changing up until that last plan check. So like we could have been at it for 2 years too at that point. So the homeowner's not going to be like, we finally got approved. Let's now hold off, model this whole thing off of what's finally been approved. Otherwise, and it's sad that no one ever wants to make a change because how difficult it is to go back into the city. So once you get approved, even if it's like not ideal, clients don't change because going back in the city is just too long, too costly. So it's kind of a crappy, I think we're building less, the homes are not as good as they could be because no one wants to go back into the city to change something that could be better for the home just because of the permitting time, which sucks. We always do it.
What's the hang up with their permitting? Is it just so much work going on? Why is it so terrible?
We just have so many, we have coastal commission. We have so many regulations. So we're on the coast. So if you're within 1 mile of the coast, you have coastal commission. They have to approve the plans first, and then it goes into your city municipality. Now you pretty much have to do a grading plan. The grading plan is a whole engineering department. They're just a grading plan right now is probably 6 to 8 months. Yeah. And that's before the building will look at it. So then, if you're doing a new build, it's at least 2 years, easy. Jeez. Probably more.
And you're dealing with like DEP for all of that coastal stuff?
Yeah, well, it's a state commission. So you have to
Uh,
go to the state first. And then, like, the city won't even look at it until the state's given their blessing.
yeah.
So it's this whole like song and dance. We have a lot of like design covenants, like some like historical kind of thing. Like we just did a little ADU, 1,100 square feet to add onto a property. Took us 9 months. Took 6 months just to get the design review board to sign off. Everything's just really long here. Um, it sucks because like I said, it kind of defeats or it sort of makes people not want to go back in with real construction changes that would probably make the house better just because of the time and cost, which sucks. We run into it all the time.
Yeah, that's a bummer. We have a couple of things like that, and it winds up being protected areas or like weird endangered species, where it's like getting the approvals and making sure that everything's on the up and up beforehand, and like which one comes first, and not putting too much money into design before you're ready to get your approvals for this and your grading done, which it winds up being like the same thing, a year, 2 years. But on the building permit end of things, like if you accounted for somewhat of a worst case bulk requirement, limited disturbance, all that stuff, you can tweak the building plans once you get those other approvals done. Like you don't, where we are, you're not required to have a full design completed to get all of those approvals done beforehand. So while you can spend the time up front and get all of those approvals done, and then when you go and you have your zoning, if it's wetlands, all of that stuff, you can get your building permit, and that's somewhat separate once you have those approvals. So you can make changes to that stuff, just obviously not with placement or like bulk requirements.
Yeah, we have a mixture. Each city kind of has their own sort of parameters and rules, but like Ranch Santa Fe, which is like this inland community, like the design review, it's down to roof material, window, the color of the window, the grids, the color of the stucco, and that cannot change. Like, because they inspect it before we get signed off from the city. So it has to be per plan. Even the driveway, the rock material, driveway material, everything. It's very, very stringent.
Let me ask a question off the record, but also on the record because we're recording a podcast. How much, like, do you ever deal with clients getting the inspection and then changing a bunch of stuff? Or do you know anyone
Yeah.
that deals with that?
I mean, so I do say, like, I try not to be involved, but it's like the Wild West here.
It's
people
so
do
bizarre.
the minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's do the minimum on your plans, get approved, and then everyone does whatever they want. And it kind of sucks because, like, if it was just more efficient, everyone would just go in and get it
Is
approved.
that like asking for a
It's just
friend?
so difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right.
Asking for a friend.
We don't do that, but there's other companies around us.
I love when like I've definitely gone into the building department asking, like, basically if there's a workaround to what I was trying to do, and they're like, you know what, let's see, what's the address? I'm like, no, I'm not giving you like, I'm not, like, you're just gonna flag me, and then the moment I start anything, like, you're showing up. This is just a question. But it is like you're spot on. If the system was efficient, like, there wouldn't be this desire to have a workaround. And it's, but I agree with you. Like, there needs to be a process, and the fact that, like, there's a distinct difference between me. I'm speaking for myself. There's a distinct difference between what I'm trying to do as a workaround than what someone else might, where they're just going to build some bullshit and it's going to be ugly and it's going to fail, and all of the reasons why there's this process in place to begin with. I'm just trying to get construction started, and I don't want to, that I'm going to end up doing exactly what is supposed to be done, because that's like my reputation, and you can come and inspect it. I'm not the guy trying to, like, pull a fast one and put a shit product up, but that's the vast majority of what happens, is that it's inefficient because they're dealing with the general group of people that are just building crap. And it's frustrating, where it's like you need like a speed pass to go through. It's like, hey, I'm verified, like, I got clear. Like, let me speed through this
Yep.
permitting and give me a permit, like a
Yep.
TSA pre-check or something like that.
Ours is really, we just can't keep plan checkers because it's a very heavily building cities. So there's like the volume is huge.
Yeah.
And so like, you're a third year out of, engineering school, and all you're doing is basically just getting yelled at by, affluent people all day.
Yeah.
Hurry the hell up with my permits. It's like the turnover is just crazy. Like,
Well,
I used to know everyone for 10 years.
Dude,
Yeah.
It's like, I say it all the time. It's like, God bless the people that work there, because I go in, I act like I don't know anything. Like, just tell me what you need and I'll do it. Like, I'm not here to yell. I just, I know that they're getting, bombarded by people just like demanding shit. And it's those people that like make that job miserable, and that we end up paying for, where it's like, yeah, it's 6 weeks because I'm sick of dealing with everyone's shit. So I'm taking my sweet ass time. And it's,
everyone wants to work around her. Yeah. Everyone wants the fast pass. Who can I pay? What can I do? I'm like, there's no, like, I always tell this story in very affluent coastal. Yeah. This guy was like, well, don't you know any inspectors or someone like we could pay more to get it done? I was like, literally, we went in there for planning. There was a pro baseball player in front of me. I was like, it's the same time for him. Like, nothing's changing, man. It's the same. We're all on the same track here.
It's funny.
Are you from the San Diego area?
Yeah, I grew up in a town called Solana Beach, which is right next to like Del Mar, which is kind of a well-known Del Mar racetrack. Yeah, I grew up right there.
I feel like the only people who like are willing to stick around and deal with that shit are the people who are from there. If not, they're like, I'm leaving. This isn't worth it.
It's hard. I mean, when you come here, the weather. I mean, a lot of people have this conversation. Like, it's so expensive. Taxes are so everything's hard. But like, our weather's pretty incredible. Our beaches are amazing. There's a lot of awesome things about it. If you can just get over all the obstacles, like, it's pretty nice. And I just had this conversation with this client who like went through hell. They finally finished their home, and they're like, I just couldn't believe I like 3 years we were gonna like kill ourselves, and like, but when we got done, our house was worth like so much, and we just did it, and we're like, no, we can't go anywhere. We love it. They're like, yeah, that's kind of what happens. Like, you get through it, and you're like, the weather's perfect. We love our house, and it's worth so much because it's so hard to build here. Like, no, we're not going anywhere. So it's kind of like the cycle that happens here.
Yeah. Dagan, do you know Wardell?
Yeah.
They're I'm in a Builder 20 group with them.
I think, didn't they just sell the older?
Yeah.
Are they still in it? They did, right? They sold, right? To a younger, or like a full project manager and office staff.
Yeah. Full transition.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. No, they do some monster stuff around here.
We were out there. It's in San Diego.
Their office is in Solana Beach, actually, I think.
And we were out there 2 years ago visiting. They hosted, and we toured some amazing properties. Incredible.
Yeah, I know they've done a couple of the big ones on the water in Del Mar. Yeah. They did a couple of those. Yeah, they're nice. Yeah. Our builder group is pretty solid. I'm going on my second year, and it's a game changer as far as like being able to meet up with these guys, and it's fun. A lot of knowledge comes from it, though.
Yeah. It's I feel like I feel like the Builder 20, that whole network has to be growing. Like, I mean, they must be adding groups like crazy, because I feel like in just the last 3 years it's become such a hot topic. And and with obviously social media and things like that, like, you're starting to see more and more people be involved. And I mean, I get reached out to like, hey, does your group have any room? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, it's just it's rare.
The prospect list is long.
It's crazy.
For sure.
And you got to keep the groups small, because otherwise the group meetings are too long. You all share, and it just gets too long. So you got to stay in that like 17 person.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's supposed to be 20. Someone else
started 17.
Like, it can be up to 20.
I always.
I think it gets too much, right?
Yeah,
like too much at 20.
We're 13, and we like it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I thought you were like super. Like, you're builder 13. You're not in a builder 20.
It's cool though. We have some good guys. There's only one other West Coast guy here. We have Utah Tyler Killowen. He's in our group.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Tyler's in our group, and Verdura Construction, Tom out of Colorado. We have some awesome guys.
Wait, is Mike in that as well?
Yeah,
Yeah,
ringside, Mike.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we
Okay.
were in Chicago last year.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mike's awesome. He's a stud.
Mike's funny. Mike is literally our number one fan. Like he's listening to this right
Is
now.
he?
Oh yeah, and
Probably.
he's gonna
Mike's a
text
funny
me,
guy.
and he's gonna be like, "See, I texted you right when you said I would."
Yeah. So
And now he
we're
will
the
know.
level heads. That's where their podcast came from.
Mm.
Our Builder 20 is called the Level Heads, which is their podcast.
Okay.
That
You're the Doors,
Zane
right?
and what's
Jeff?
that?
Yeah, we're the Doors.
Yeah, the Doors. Yeah.
The Doors. We have a guy from Jersey now, or he's been there for long. Manetti. He's from like Spring Lake area.
Oh, that's
Manetti Construction.
north of me, closer to New York.
Yeah, he does some really cool coastal stuff.
Yeah, once you get up that way, it's like a completely different market. Once you get north, I feel like the state's split in half. Anything north of Trenton is a lot different than where I am. There's some like huge, they built some big houses up there.
Yeah, we were just in Charleston with another member, and that was super fun because Charleston's got all the waterways and just amazing coastal properties. That was cool.
So how'd you get involved with the Builder 20?
I think I don't remember who I was chatting. Like it was either like Tom from Lost Creek Construction in Colorado. I like became sort of just like friends with him, and Jamie Verdura up in Half Moon Bay. And I think at some point I was like, your Builder group 20 sounds like awesome. And at some point, Tom, I think, reached out to me and said, like, would you want to come to our spring, I think you have to do kind of your first like perspective meeting. They just kind of like asked, like, would you guys want to come for the fall meeting? And that was kind of it. It's kind of out of the blue a little bit.
You realize how valuable it is with how many people that you speak with. And I think that like, it's a testament to how much everyone wants to help everyone, but also just like how desperately in need of help our industry is and how far behind the times we are. And just for basic business things and how to structure your business and properly charge money and market yourself and just ensuring that your numbers are actually covering what they need to. I think that there's a lot of information out there and resources for us as builders, but the more that we can get, the better, because I think that as we grow and more people grow and more people learn and, up themselves and raise the entire industry, I think it's better for all of us.
And I honestly like kudos to the like veterans in our group because like they bring such wealth of knowledge. Like Jenkins, who's in our he's out of Austin, he's like a stud, and like he probably doesn't have to be in the group anymore. He's got a great business, but he's still there and he's still just giving gems every day. And like kudos to the guys who are like sticking around and like feeding that stuff for us, and like hopefully we'll return the favor. But like it takes a lot. Like these guys have great businesses. They've gone through the ringer. They've gone through everything, and it's super valuable that they're sticking around and giving us their insights. So kudos to the veterans.
Well, I think that's the culture, Dagan. I think that the whole thing is built around, there's always got to be somebody better than you to knowledge drop. And then, then the thought is that you then become the teacher. And believe it or not, you learn just as much as the teacher as you do the student, just because you listen to yourself and you say, wow, that sounded really good. Why don't I do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
we don't give ourselves credit for what we might actually know.
Right.
I don't, at least, a lot.
Yeah. But I'm in my 8th year in it, and it's such a game changer. And I'm still like, I don't ever feel like, okay, I've had enough. There's nothing more for me to learn. So I'm gonna move on. So it's just constant evolution.
But I'm sure you're super valued in your group, because I'm sure like just your experience and your, what you've gone through, that information is so valuable. And I know like the younger guys are like, we're just like there, like Google eyes, like, keep it coming. Like, I know you've gone through it. So like, tell me how to get through this. And, the crappy part of this business, people get in lawsuits and there's legal troubles, and it's like, all of those guys have gone through something. Right. So, figuring out the path forward is always, it's super helpful. Just like, know you've gone through it. Here's how I did it. It might work for you. Like, just that little bit of knowledge is really valuable.
Yeah, and I think that different guys bring different expertise. Like I might be more knowledgeable about, something, having employees, self-performing work, whereas other guys might be better at writing a subcontractor agreement, or, there's always somebody with expertise for different topics, and that's where the real
Are you more of a
value comes
self-performer,
in.
Jeff?
There's not. Yeah. Yep.
Do
Yeah, we
you self-perform
self-perform.
most things, or?
Well, like you, we have 2 architectural designers, we have interior designers, about 50 carpenters, a full shop, and then we have a whole masonry.
You said
division.
50, right? 50.
So that's those. Yeah. So a total of 70.
That's a lot of carpenters.
But
okay.
A total of 70 people, about 50 carpenters. Yeah. So that we self-perform all the carpentry functions, and yeah, it comes with its own, set of ground rules and its own set of headaches and everything in between.
Yeah, we self-perform a fair amount, and it's a challenge, but I kind of like it, and I like being able to execute and get quick and do things how I want to do it. But it's a lot handling all those people.
What do you guys self-perform?
Foundation, frame, all interior millwork, and tile. So we have somewhere between 8 and 12 in the field on the construction side. And then our landscape crews do all our foundations. They're all masons. So there's another 6 to 8 guys there.
Was that part of the reason for adding the landscaping side of the company?
Not really. It just happened like a couple of my foremen used to work in foundations. They're very good masons for the most part. All we do is flat work, stone veneers. That's like their specialty, outdoor barbecues. But a couple of the guys were very good at foundations as far as reading plans, forming. So at some point we started to do a couple small ones, and then we figured out we had the capacity to basically do most of our own foundations, and it's kind of just how
everything's on slab out there. Oh, we lost them.
Uh-oh.
Where'd he go?
I feel like whatever he was. Oh, is he back?
Yeah. Let's see. Hey. Most of your stuff's on slab out there.
Almost everything. Yeah. Everything's slab here. We have height restrictions back to the permitting, so everyone does slab because we can only go up so high. So if you want a 10-foot ceiling on each of your floors, you have to do slab, 10-foot ceiling, 1 foot in the cavity, 10-foot ceiling, flat roof, because that's the max we can do here.
I feel like if I had height restrictions, why wouldn't I do a basement?
It's very difficult here and expensive. Yeah.
You guys have water table? I mean, if
we have water tables. We're close to the coast. Yeah. It's hard to do septic systems here because our water table is so shallow. Rancho Santa Fe, which is not all of it's on sewer, it's always difficult to do septics. Like we have 3 acres and we're barely getting in our leach field.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Plus you're dealing with
we have all those things.
all the fun organizations to get the approvals for all that crap.
Yes. So going underground soils it gets really complicated.
Yeah, especially when you're that close to the coast. I'd be interested to see, and you probably don't have an answer at this point, but like as your business transitions and you're doing more of the design work, from like a sustainability, profitability perspective, which business winds up being like easier to manage, more lucrative without requiring as much energy and effort from, if you can get the design end of things up and running and create and establish those relationships with the builders that you want to, if that's like a more viable outlet for future jobs and projects and transition for your business than having the overhead and running the construction company. Not that you want to leave that behind, but just like I've always said that there's so many areas, even my area, who need better, more knowledgeable designers who understand the construction aspect of things and like think that there's such a market for that, but obviously never did any marketability or testing of that to see what that looks like. But I would be curious as you progress with things, like which side of the business is a little easier to make the money with less stress.
I mean, the design side, like there's just no liability. You know, we're in our liability as builders is crazy. So you take that out, and all you have to do is you get to make fees and draw. So there's a big margin there.
Yeah.
But for us to move outside of our wheelhouse in our local area, the project has to be of scale that like supports an outside designer. So,
Yep.
you know, when you see some of these designers, you know, flying all over the country, it's because the project can support it. It's a, you know, it's a multi-million-dollar build, very high-end architect usually. And so that's sort of what we look for is like, is this project we're getting an inquiry about support, you know, design fees and an outside designer to fly us out there, travel costs, that kind of thing. Locally though, like we have a huge market in Los Angeles and Orange County. So that's not hard for us to drive up there for a day and be local. So that was part of what I looked at. It's really hard for me to build in Los Angeles, but it's not hard for me to design a house there.
Just
if I need, yeah.
From like a geographic standpoint, or just it being a different market?
Geographic. Like I could, you know, if I need to do a site visit every 6 weeks, it's a 2-hour drive there. So it's not hard, but to build and like, you know, emergency happen, I got to drive 4 hours round trip to go look at something, like that's not sustainable.
Yeah. Would you say that overall the quality of work is different where you are versus LA?
It kind of depends. You know, LA is enormous. So if you're talking about Beverly Hills, Pacific Palisades, you know, very nice neighborhoods, the quality of work's awesome. You know, there's amazing builders there and architects and designers. Our little wheelhouse is pretty small because it's like 5 miles, but it's predominantly pretty affluent areas, coastal. So the quality of work that the project we try to get are, you know, high-end design where, you know, they see the value in what we're doing.
Yeah. I love California. It just seems like there's so many headaches. It's a nice state. I always said if I was homeless, I'd move to San Diego. It's like perfect weather. People have money to
be. That's why we have a homeless problem.
Make a decent living panhandling.
And where else would you want to be? You can sleep outside like 80% of the year comfortably. So
do you watch the news?
I mean, yeah. I go into Philadelphia and it's like the middle of winter and you have people sleeping on the railroad tracks. I'm like, why aren't you heading out west? Like you could be in San Diego right now, just living the dream.
Well, a lot of them are catching on. Yeah, we got a lot of them. Yeah,
they're probably coming down from San Francisco.
It's everywhere. I mean, Los Angeles, San Diego, like every coastal city is dealing with it. There's no good answer. There's, you know, housing costs are so high here. There is no affordability. You know, that's a whole nother like political talk, but you know, it is a problem. It's unfortunate.
I feel like that San Diego, I don't know your particular area of San Diego, but has like a very unique style of architecture that lends itself well to like all the masonry trades, the tile work. Is that one of the reasons why you guys self-perform tile in-house?
Part of it is like tile's a hard thing because we do a lot of like complicated installs.
Yeah.
And I went through a lot of subs that just like, you know, they want to turn and burn. They want to backer board it, you know, scratch and get out. And like, we just do so many complicated things. We'd always have to stop them. And, you know, it was always an upcharge, change order. We don't do it that way. And at some point my guy's awesome. And so basically with him and a helper can basically do one house, you know, 4 to 6 bathrooms at a time, no problem. And that was kind of why we did it, is just to have like the control of like, you know, the details that we want to do. And like back to the design side, like we almost never use any trim. So we always return tile.
Yeah.
So like that's something that we always point out on our plans. You have to set your rough valve 1 inch farther from the frame. You know, these like little like things that once you do 20 times, it's like, it's got to be second nature.
So are you guys doing all mud in your showers?
We do a mixture. Sometimes we'll use dent shield or we'll scratch it. Yeah, it just depends on the application. Kids' rooms, shower, we'll dent shield. If it's more of a steam room or something more that we need, you know, perfect straight edge, we'll scratch it.
Yeah, nobody does that around here. I mean, we do bases, but nobody does mud walls.
It's still pretty common here. A lot of guys like insist on doing it just because you get such a flat wall.
Yeah.
And it's great for steam. Works great for steam showers, so we do it a lot when it's a steam.
I mean, I think that if you do it every day as well, you can become pretty efficient with it. The
Mm-hmm.
challenge is here where it's like you have all of these boards that people can put up in a day, and you're paying for the cost and the material, not necessarily the labor. And then you can get people who don't have the experience to do them. And when people don't understand or know the bit difference, or you're not necessarily building like a traditional or more period correct house, it's like, is it worth the cost? But that's something that I would love to be able to offer, to do more. It's not common out here.
I mean, that's good. The Schluter system is not inexpensive, but you have to be quick at it in order for it to. It's a really good system, but you have to know how to install it and be efficient for it to work out. So if you do, and like some guys like just insist on using the Curdy system, and they're really good at it, and they can have a shower ready in a few hours, it's awesome. It probably pays for itself.
Yeah. I think you're spot on though. It's like it because that's a common complaint. It's like, oh, it's so expensive. It's like, yeah, but the intent is that you become so good at it that it becomes you make the money up in the efficiency.
And you're also making money on like a mud shower. You're making the money on your labor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily the cost of to purchase a full Schluter shower system or Weedy shower. Like the materials are expensive and it goes up quick. So the labor cost is lower. But like when you're doing stuff by hand, you're making money on your labor. The sand and cement doesn't necessarily cost that much money. For me, I'd rather be paying somebody in the labor and have a shower that's going to literally last like 100 years.
We do a lot of masonry. I mean, like a lot of houses are stucco here, so we do a lot of lath and plaster, a lot of stone veneer. So that's really common for us here.
Yeah,
we do a lot of stucco. A lot of Santa Barbara smooth stucco is very common.
And is your stucco top coat an acrylic, or is it all cement based?
It's cement based, but they use a fiberglass mixer as a binder.
Mm-hmm.
So in the mix, they'll throw in fiberglass, so it helps with any cracking.
Yeah,
it's a kind of a premium product, but we use fiberglass actually after our brown coat. We actually roll on fiberglass, and then we do fiberglass. It's like a shredded fiberglass in our color coat mix, so it helps from cracking two ways. It's a very like premium product when you're doing Santa Barbara, but like Santa Barbara looks like crap when it starts to crack, so you got to do it.
Yeah. And what are you guys doing for? I know near us, like it's probably not the same type of stucco, and like we had so many issues with not having drainage planes behind it and like detailing with weep screeds and all that stuff. Like, are you guys what they have in place for code now? I feel is like 2000s McMansion details as far as like drainage planes and wheat screeds and easy beads and all that crap. Like, what are you guys using for all of that out near you where you're trying to keep the traditional stucco like aesthetic, and you don't want these like plastic trims on the outside of your house or like foam?
We use stainless steel or galvanized on our weep screed.
Yeah.
And then it's traditional. It's 2 layers of felt and then lath over the top. So the 2 layers of felt create that air barrier where air can pass through and dry it out. There's all these like newer systems from Delta and whatnot, but like traditionally it's 2 layers of felt with your lath over the top. You could even do it on places that don't have shear because mud will just sort of form and then you flatten it out. Because not all houses used to have shear everywhere, so it would just be a stud wall that they would tack on their felt paper and lath, and then they would just mud it flat. So when you do that scratch coat, you use the little rake, and then once they brown it, they screed it, and that's where you get your flat wall. And then your color coat should be dead flat at that point. We do 3 layers. I think a lot of guys do like 1 layer in a lot of parts of the country.
Yeah.
We do scratch brown and color coat.
Yeah, we're doing something similar here. It's just like this. I don't know why people stucco homes around here. It was just a look and probably some sort of cost-effective option in the 90s and the 2000s, but there was no sort of detailing. Like they were using 2 layers of felt, and it was creating somewhat of a drainage plane. Once it got wet, it would like dimple. But they weren't addressing any of the flashing details correctly. So there were just like all of these massive class action lawsuits where they're basically ripping off the entire exterior of homes, and then having to replace windows, rot, interior, exterior. And I think that like they tried to simplify that process and put stuff in place with lath inspections and easy beads and all these like plastic products. But I just like, or we'll use foam trim on the stucco, and it just looks like a 90s 2000s.
How you return it into windows and doors is tricky. If you don't have brakes, like we use Milcor a lot when we have to get around something. We actually frame it with Milcor, so it gives us a stopping point, and we can flash it underneath. Stucco, you have to get pretty good at it. I actually, for my house, I had to make a custom weep screed because I use rock wool on the outside, and then I have stone. So from my frame, it's like 4 inches thick. So I had to make like a stainless steel. It was actually I think it ended up being 3.5 inches wide, my weep screed. So it's just like a J metal that I made, and then it had perforated holes in it. But the idea was that my weep screed held all of the material proud of the wall.
Yeah.
So it came out really good. But stuff you have to think about, like way ahead of time.
And what's your detail around the windows traditionally?
So we traditional flashing, and then you end, because we always have not a Milcor, but a stucco key.
Yeah.
So your window is proud, and so we always just dry it into the window.
Yeah.
So it's the cleanest look.
Yeah. That's nice.
Sometimes we'll have a return, like I did it on my house. My stucco actually returns back to the window.
Yep.
And that's a popular Spanish. You actually inset your window, so your stucco returns back. It's very cool. So you actually set the window. Sometimes I'll do it like 4 to 6 inches deep. So then your stucco returns back into that window. Yeah. Creates like a really cool cavity.
Yeah, that's sweet. Looks way better than the stupid friggin' styrofoam moldings they put up everywhere.
Dude, that's all I see.
We had to do.
It's so bad.
Yeah, I don't.
We did a lot of stone.
I can't tell you if I've ever seen real stucco around here. Certainly not in a new construction.
San Diego.
I've been to San Diego. I've been to Santa Barbara. Like I love the stucco out there. I've been down to Austin, and there's a bunch of homes that have that polished stucco down there. Like, I think it's a really nice look. It's just everything. Anyone that does it around here, it's even some of these big luxury builders. It's like I'm watching them throw up styrofoam and.
Dude, we screwed it up so badly.
I'm like, dude. And I mean, there's so much wrong with it, and then the detailing is just terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, foam is still used, but it's kind of a hokey way of making some sort of detail. But it's still used quite a bit.
But I think like
a chair rail or something.
Sure. Like, I'm not saying that the foam is the issue. I think that what happens is that the foam is used, and then on top of that, then they're doing a crappy job on top of the foam.
Yeah.
So it's just like you've went in this direction of being crappy, and you just continue to be crappier.
Or when they do like the corners in foam and they like stack it in all different patterns. It's like, this looks good. It looks like you renovated like a motel.
I mean, it was like a house. McMansion thing to like dress up a home, is like put a foam detail on it. It never really played well. If you just do more of a traditional return or something, it's going to look way more traditional and better for sure.
Yeah.
Just layer that shit up.
But we do a lot of, the Spanish style is very beautiful when you have like a really classic Spanish style house with a real mortared in clay roof. It's pretty traditionally cool.
Yeah.
We see that a lot, that kind of like contemporary Spanish look. We're seeing a lot of that in our area.
Yeah, and I feel like it lasts for so long, and it's so durable, and like you guys are in a coastal environment that you don't really get harsher conditions than that. And to be able to put a product to market that's going to stand up and be super durable in that market. Like, what else? I don't know. I feel like everything that is made today or grown the way that it's grown, you put it down the shore near us, which is the shore, and it's trashed within like a year or two. It just doesn't hold up.
We have to be really cautious of our metals that we use. Like, you can't use like galvanized, or like when we do houses anywhere near the water, if it's not brass or 304 stainless, it's going to just rot. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen full handles just rotted out off exterior windows and doors. It's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
I did this house on the water. I always make this joke. This guy, they had like a laborer that worked there. And so they had like an Ipe fence that wrapped around and then the stainless steel railing. This guy's whole job, all he did is literally went from one side, sanded the Ipe, refinished it. Then he polished all the stainless steels, went to the other side, did the Ipe, repolished it. And the time he got back, the other side was ready to be done. All he did is just go in a circle all year.
Yeah.
Took like 3 months each project because it just beats the crap out of anything there. It's hilarious. Even stainless steel pits. So you have to polish stainless steel.
Yeah, the best part is working with stainless steel hardware too, and it's not magnetic, so it just keeps falling off of whatever the hell you're using.
Yeah.
Or we're gonna do a dock, and you need all stainless steel hardware, and it's like you're working over water, just dropping screws in the water all day.
We ever installed a Sub-Zero fridge, and then the client's like pissed off because they can't stick anything to it.
Yeah.
That was the
You
point.
probably shouldn't be sticking something on your $25,000 refrigerator anyway.
I know. I've actually had that happen though. They're like, "It's not magnetic. What's the deal?" It's stainless. It's funny
because it's not fake.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. I appreciate you taking some time to hop on a phone call or a podcast. All your work looks amazing.
Thank you, guys. It's fun. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Megan with a D.
Megan with a D. If anyone wants to find you or wants to come hire you to work in some crazy part of the country to check out your design services, where's the best place for them to find you?
Instagram's probably the easiest. At Dagan Design. It's probably the most up to date. I try to do stories and keep it interesting and authentic and real. Everything on there is us. It's all our work. www.dagandesignconstruction.com is our website. ddclandscape.com is our landscape company. And then DDC & Co. is our furniture line. So at DDC & Co. is Instagram. At DDC Landscape is at Instagram as well. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of a conglomerate of fun stuff. And
there you go.
Like we try to just build the coolest, unique buildings, and however we can be involved. That's kind of what we're after.
You're like West Coast Nick.
Was you have like 20 companies too, Nick? Like you're kind of dabbling a bunch of stuff.
I do, and so I was really interested in hearing like everything that you had going on and how you were just managing it, because I just went through my Builder 20 did a SWOT analysis on my company, and I don't think I'm supposed to share too much of it, but like basically the overarching thing, which was no surprise, was that I have too much on my plate and that I need to delegate.
Dude, concentrate on the building kind of thing.
Well, it's just more like you got to delegate and lean on some of your team and your partners a little bit more. And I mean, I will say, in the Builder 20, like I think the Builder 20 is immensely valuable. I think doing a SWOT analysis on my company was probably the most valuable thing I've ever done. And it was a ton of work, but it really gave me. It was funny. They at one point they were like, "Hey, this might sound surprising to you," and whatever they said, I was like, "That's not surprising." Jeff, are you typing a letter over there?
No, I got my hands like this. I don't know.
That's you.
That is it loud?
It's Nick. I'm 60. This is how I type.
I thought so. I was like, man, Jeff, you got fast.
Does it sound like I'm a fast typer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sick. I didn't realize my mic was picking up that well. Damn. I was sending DDC & Co. to my wife. Damn. Never mind. Sorry, Dagan. Sorry, Dagan. That got shot down. Screw DDC & Co.
My point being is like it was insightful and it really like helped provide clarity. But it was very much about the fact that I have, 7-8 different things going on, and, do they all require the same amount of attention or not? And that was really like something I had to dig deep into. And, because the natural thing is like, hey, just focus on one thing. If you focus on one thing, it will be super successful, and kind of drop the stuff that isn't your priority. And I have a hard time with that because including the podcast, like, the podcast has provided a ton of value to me and my business. So for me to just walk away from the podcast, it's like I just can't do that. And for anyone listening, that was not recommended. Like that was not something that was recommended in my SWAT, to be clear. But it is. It's just, a lot on your plate can diminish the investment that you put into the individual parts and pieces of it. So, kind of being
I
reminded
run through the
of that.
same thing. Like ones that might not be profitable now, like do I drop them? But like I have a passion for them. So
Yeah.
I know like what's feeding those companies, and I got to keep that afloat, and I got to keep working at that.
Yeah.
But like these are really cool things I'm doing. They might not be at the same level as like the one that's floating it, but like I think it's a really cool idea, and I'm gonna stick with it. But like I agree, I've had to think about how I can lean on some of my team members to take over responsibilities that like I'm currently doing, but someone else could be doing. I gotta get those right people in place. But it's not perfect by any stretch. All this is hard, but I wouldn't change it. It's cool.
Perfect. Dagan, yeah, as Tyler said, appreciate you hopping on, man. This is cool and super inspiring, and just like everything you got going on. If anyone wants to check you guys, I will include Dagan's link in the description below so you can check out his work. But I appreciate you, and next time I'm in the San Diego area, I'll be hitting you up.
Hit me up. I know you guys are Brad. I chat with Brad a lot. He's from San Diego, so
yeah,
you guys need to make a little trip out here.
Will do.
Thank you guys. The podcast's cool. I've been listening for years, so you guys are a good inspo for everyone in this industry. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
You're the best, man. Yeah, man. Like when he rattled off that list in the beginning, I'm like, dude, this is literally what I just got my ass chewed on.
Yeah,
that's so much. And I think you said it a couple of episodes ago, Jeff. Is just like you've realized that you need to focus on one thing, not everything.
Yeah. Too many distractions.
Yeah, and you said that, and I remember walking away from the podcast thinking about it, and then when the SWAT came, and they were like, "All right, Nick, like this might sound like a surprise to you, but," and then I was like, "No, I mean, I knew that. It wasn't so much that I wasn't aware of it. It was how do I prioritize things in a way that I don't let people down, and that was what I came to realize is that I was afraid of letting people down, and really that's what it came down to, and I think not to my surprise, but to my, I don't know the word to use, to my delight. Is that the right word? That the people that I feared that I would let down had a better understanding of the fact that I needed to delegate more. And I think that was ultimately like, just kind of a reassurance of like, all right, I'm doing the right thing. Let me step back and let other people step in to where I was, falsely fulfilling.
I and I had a conversation with you separately, and it's not a conversation that like anything. So Nick's Builder 20 interviewed me, and it was like nothing that I hadn't had conversations with Nick in person, and like even afterwards with Nick was like, it's none of this is news to you. You understand all of this, and like it's never like I get upset or I'll get resentful when I feel somebody's taking advantage of me, and it's because they're looking either to reap some sort of rewards or they're not putting in effort elsewhere, and it's like I don't ever feel that you've taken advantage of me. I know what you have going on, and I think that we're both contributing however we can. And I think that most people who are within your circle probably understand that, that there's just a lot going on. There's so many hours in a day, and that at the end of the day, you're trying to maintain and salvage and, nurse as many relationships as you can because that's what you do. And I think it's probably just a bit of prioritizing time and figuring out what can be delegated and what you're actually needed for. But I'm sure that none of that was news to you.
No.
And I think it's also about putting things in the right buckets. So like when he rattled off those various businesses, so you really got to separate what is business and what is just a hobby. So like for you guys, the podcast is a hobby, right? So you're not relying on the podcast to put food on your table or pay your mortgage. Maybe someday there's a future value, and that's great. But as long as you enjoy doing it, it's not a business, it's a hobby. So keep it there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I've Tyler and I have talked about it a lot recently, but it's crazy to think for 6 years, or for more than 6 years at this point, every single week we sit down and do this for 2 to 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind-boggling, actually.
It's like, I've never even added up the math of how many hours that is, but it's like that's a long ass time and a
Yeah.
lot for it to be a hobby. But I
Do
think
you
you're right, Jeff.
guys have you ever done any type of feedback analysis of whether or not, you guys landed on round about 2 hours? What if you
Mhm.
cut it back to 60 minutes? I mean, would it be as effective, or do you think you're going to gloss over
We
some
serve.
things?
I would say.
I think
I
most
think
people
Tyler and
wanted
I have.
longer, and we did longer
Yeah,
for a while. It's just Nick and I can't do longer anymore.
I think
Yeah.
90 minutes is you like. I think 90 minutes has been our. It's been like the most consistent when like the conversation starts to fizzle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
an hour, like 45 minutes is definitely not enough. An
Right.
hour feels like, we are at the climax and we could definitely keep talking. Hour and 15 is probably when it like you've captured everything and then it's like 15 minutes of rambling. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's kind of how it's been shaking out.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we definitely did a survey, and there was definitely times where people were like 2+ hours is awesome. But it's also you have to think about the fact that like it depends on everyone listens to this differently, right? Like
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people listen to it during work and they just have it going. Other people listen to it when they're driving and they want to hear the whole thing before they get to work.
Right. Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you just have to, I mean, sometimes you dig into something really juicy,
Hmm.
and you're at minute 65,
Oh
and
yeah.
you gotta give it its justice.
Right.
So
For sure.
you don't want to just say, "Hey, sorry, time's up."
Yeah. Right.
You brought that topic up too late. You should have brought it up at minute
Yeah. Right.
15.
No, and there's some conversations where it's like, oh my God, we're only 45 minutes into this. It's pulling teeth. And then
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
some where it's like, holy crap, we need to start wrapping this up. We really have to
Yeah.
get you back on at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just ask for your own sanity. That's a big commitment.
Yeah, so
So
we obviously prep time aside and everything else podcast related aside right now, it's like, all right, we want to basically devote 2 hours to recording and ad reads and prepping for what's to come. So I feel like that's a safe amount of time where, hey, we're going to sit down at 3 and we're going to record until 5 and then shut it off. And there's other things podcast related, but from a week to week perspective, I think that's a fair contribution to just the recording week in and week out.
Mm.
Well, with that being said, if you guys have been avid listeners, head over to moderncraftsman.co. Please sign up for the newsletter. We also uploaded both our labor burden calculator and our pre-construction agreement template to the website. Previously, we were selling those. We are now giving them away for free. It's in the More tab. I think it's More tab, right? Extras tab. Thank you, Tyler, for being there. There's an extras tab all the way to the right on the menu. You can download those, like I said, for free. We have them up there for I don't know, a finite amount of time, but that finite is TBD. And also, if you haven't signed up for the newsletter on the website, if you click, I think it is. Hold on, let me make sure.
If you go to the
Oh
website,
yeah.
scroll all the way down.
Well, there's a subscribe button on the right, is what I was going to get at because we added that. That will loop you into our newsletter, and we release show information every week, as well as additional information that is only for our newsletter readers, and including some discount code for our upcoming Contractor Coalition Summit. So if you haven't got that code and you are in the newsletter, send me a DM at Nick Schiffer on Instagram. I'll make sure you get that code so you can get the discount and come to our live event in Boston, September 25th. We'll see you then.